Hi, my name is Karen Gaines, your nonprofit finance guide, and today I am going to talk about requesting overhead when filling out a funding application. Overhead, or indirect costs, as they are sometimes called, represent the expenditures it takes to run the operations of an organization that is not directly involved in providing services. These expenditures generally consist of finance, legal, human resources, payroll, IT, executive pay, and other expenditures that help run the organization. These expenditures are usually the ones in the background that no one physically sees. When completing a funding application, a budget needs to be completed. The budget will ask for direct service costs such as labor, benefits, supplies, and any other purchases needed to provide services. Then, at the end, it asks for overhead or indirect cost. Some funding applications have a predetermined amount you can request for overhead. Some are 8% of direct expenses, while others are 10% and 12% of direct expenses. These are especially seen with government funding applications. Some funding applications do not even allow you to request funding for overhead. They want all of their dollars to go to direct services. What these funders fail or refuse to understand is that it takes those overhead type expenses in order to run the organization. And in some cases, refusing to fund overhead expenses actually hurts the nonprofit, not help it. Let's face it, many nonprofits are not swimming in money, and if your organization is not in a position to receive funding without having overhead funded too, I would recommend you not applying for it. Then there are other funding applications that allow you to enter the overhead amount. The question is, how much do you enter? There are a few ways in which you can calculate this. 1. Allocate based on time. Determine the amount of time required to deliver services for each of your current programs or projects. Use this time allocation as a basis for distributing your overhead expenses. 2. Allocation based on direct cost. Determine the amount of direct cost required to deliver services for each of your current programs or projects. Use this cost allocation as a basis for distributing your overhead. Number 3. Allocation based on FTE count. Programs with a larger FTE count are allocated more overhead cost. Number 4, fixed percentage. Allocate overhead based on a fixed percentage for each program. There should be some type of reasoning behind your fixed percentages, but you can just, review each program or service and allocate a percentage of overhead for each. You'll essentially have to choose the right method of allocating overhead, whatever works for your nonprofit organization. But once you select it, you will have a proper overhead amount that should be requested when completing a funding application. So, when you are requesting an overhead amount in the funding application, you are not haphazardly including a random amount. If you are ever asked by the funder how you came up with that overhead amount, you will have a logical answer to provide. Or if the funder has a predetermined amount of overhead you can use in its funding application and it's not enough, you can talk with the funder and request more. Explain to the funder what consists of overhead and that these costs are needed to run the expected services. See how they respond. I had a situation in which a funder allocated overhead of 10% of direct expenses. This was too low, as this would have been a major program. During the funding meeting, I explained to the funder that overhead for this program required more resources and that 10% was too low. After further discussion, it was agreed that more funding would be allocated to cover the overhead expenses. Keep in mind that some funders are open to listening to feedback, and it is okay to ask for more money for overhead to carry out certain services to help the community. So I hope this video was helpful. Let me know what you all think. If you're watching via YouTube, let me know what you're thinking on there. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching and have a great day.